The first 5 minutes. I just need somewhere to vent, and this subreddit seems to have similar stories, so I hope you guys are respectful. I know I need to see a therapist for this, and I am. I see her once a week, and she's lovely, incredibly kind, and knows what she's doing. But she won't listen to me. She won't fucking understand. Yes, the months I was locked away did affect me. Yes, I was beaten and starved, but that isn't what sticks with me. What sticks with me, what fills my skull every night before bed and makes me wake up screaming, is just the first 5 minutes. Each minute feels like hours when I relive them. Each minute has its own horrors, and they truly haunt me whenever I have time to myself, so I will detail them here, minute by minute, as chapters. The first minute. A crashing noise awoke me from my sleep, the sound of splintering wood and the violent yell of a man. At first I assumed it was outside, a neighbor fighting with their spouse or some drugged-up prick wanting to get a score. I sat in bed. I listened intently for a few seconds. The silence for those brief, blissful moments made me assume I had entirely made up the noise. Then another explosion of noise, this time followed by the bellows of a screaming man. He was yelling utter nonsense, just screams of rage and potential pain. The sound was wood breaking, snapping, and splitting down the center. It was definitely my front door. Downstairs, a 10-second walk from my room. Someone was at my door trying to get in. Someone was trying to break in, and they didn't even care. I knew. They didn't care if I called the cops. They just wanted in. Needed in. My skin crawled at the thought. My hairs stood on end. This wasn't a robbery. This was going to be a murder or worse. After this point, there was never a moment of respite, just constant screaming and noise. Another crash. This time I heard something heavy thunk against the downstairs carpet, the door handle. The yelling became louder. There was nothing in between his mouth and the empty air of my house. The wood was gone, and he was inside. I reached my hand slowly towards my bedside table, my fingers tapping around looking for my phone. "Let me in! Let me the fuck in!" echoed up through my house as the final thunderous sound of my door being obliterated ricocheted into my ears. The voice was torn, like a smoker but wet. I could hear the spittle in his voice. My fingers touched glass. My phone. I had found my phone. I lifted it and my fingers danced around the edge, hunting for the power button. I pressed the button in and all I saw was a red battery symbol. My very limited vision whipped to the power socket, 2 empty slots. I trailed my cable from my phone to the floor and spotted the anchored weight of an unplugged charger. I couldn't call the police. I had no way to get help. The second minute. "Where are you? I see your car outside. Where are you?" I couldn't pinpoint the voice. I didn't know who it was. He was screaming into a void of a house looking for anyone home. I couldn't imagine why. I didn't want to. I moved myself slowly to the edge of the bed. I heard the springs in my mattress reset and make soft metal tings as I moved. Each noise felt like a gunshot, like he could hear it from downstairs, and he would come directly to me, beat me to death, or choke me until I was gone. I sat quietly at the edge of my bed and listened. He was slamming things downstairs, hurling stuff across the room. I would hear the sound of a vase grinding off its purchase on one side of the room and the crash of it on the other side. The entire time he demanded I show myself. "Get out now! Come here!" Anger. He had no other emotion in his voice. No desperation, no fear, not even an inkling of sadness. Pure rage. The moments he would stop screaming, I would hear him cough, hack, and spit. The bellowing caused bile to rise to his throat and he needed to get it out. The agony his throat must have been going through, screaming every word, constantly, only pausing when his body's natural urges forced him to gargle and spit out the horrid buildup. During the final cough cycle, I heard a pause, a disgusting stomach-wrenching gurgle, and then the sound of liquid splattering across the floors downstairs. The third minute. That splattering caused my mind to catch up to me. I needed to escape. He would find me eventually, and he would hurt me. Rising to my feet slowly, the bed creaking just loud enough to make me gasp in panic, I slowly tiptoed to my window. All the while I heard the man downstairs. "Fuck! Fucking hell! I'm going to fucking kill you!" Followed by another splattering of vomit. Each time my toes touched the carpet, I imagined him hearing something that was imperceivable up here. Creaking wood that was muffled to me by the carpet, but clear as day to anyone downstairs. I moved as quietly as I could. I looped from one side of my bed to the other. I made my way to the window. There was nothing to jump onto, but I was only one story up. The fall wouldn't kill me. I was young then, flexible. Even if I hit the ground poorly, I would be able to crawl silently away. Anything was better than sneaking through my house as a monster slaughtered my memories downstairs. As I crept, he began tossing objects again. Sometimes I could tell what he was retrieving. I could hear which wall he pulled a frame off of. He moved to a wall on the opposite end of the house. I heard him struggle with the hook that hung the only picture I had of my dead mom in the house. I heard him fling the frame into a wall. I heard the glass shatter. "This you bitch!" he yelled. "You the old cunt or the whore!" As awful as it was to hear, that sentence was the only thing that calmed me even slightly. This maniac, this freak, definitely didn't know me. He wasn't in my house to get revenge or punish me for not being a good enough woman. He was just here as a random act of rage. If I escaped, he couldn't find me again. He didn't know me. I reached my window and I grabbed the handle. I knew it would be loud. I knew I would need to break the fly screen and immediately jump out. It had to happen quickly. I ran through the steps in my head. First swing window open, second punch fly screen, third jump. I let out a final breath, a wheezing cry of a breath. I tightened my grip on the handle. I yanked the window. It moved quickly, but it rattled. I jostled around. The single second it took to yank the window felt like an eternity. Each bump in the frame felt like a mountain I needed to overcome within a nanosecond. Each rattle signaled the psycho downstairs to charge up and murder me. Then it got stuck. The window jammed. Less than halfway open, it was stuck. I yanked and it wouldn't move any further. It had found a resting spot, and it decided that's where it would remain. "Was that you? I'm coming up. You're dead, slut." The fourth minute. I frantically searched the window. Why was it stuck? It opened yesterday, the day before, the day before. Why now? I gave it another yank. Jammed. It refused. The stairwell started to creak. I let go of the window. He knew I was upstairs, but not which room. I could still save myself. As I took one last look at the window, I saw what had happened. A pencil, one I used for art, was stuck under the window pane. I must have tossed it, possibly across the room in a moment of anger. I would have thrown it a few hours prior and forgot about it, but there it was, the smug pencil laid perfectly in the rail to catch the window. A punishment by the powers that be for having the audacity to be angry. My punishment for having a single moment of unhappiness at my work was my death. I grabbed at the pencil as I listened to the intruder thunder up the stairs. My room was the first you see as you enter the second floor. I was an idiot to think he wouldn't find me. I gripped the pencil as best I could and pulled, but the weight of the glass caused it to be pressed flat against the metal rail. It had become as stuck as the window itself. Thunk. Something crashed into my door. The man, his shoulder. I stared at the lockless handle and waited for it to shift, to rattle. Tears streamed down my face, causing my eyes to burn, and snot bubbled at the brim of my nose. Which room was it? Which fucking room? His voice was so clear, I could hear the tears in his larynx as he roared. He didn't mean to hit my door. He must have stumbled. My safety was secured, if but for a moment. Then he ran to a different room of my house. I heard the door slam open, knocking something glass off a shelf, and it smashed onto the floor. I rotated back to the window. I tried to close the window. It was jammed that way as well. The pencil caused a perfect seal that wouldn't allow the window to open by tilting it just enough that the window was driven into the frame. Unmovable entirely. I inspected the gap I had, just as wide as my head. I would need to tilt my body, but I thought it was doable. I listened as the man tore up the room he had chosen. The shattering of glass made me realize he was in the bathroom and just obliterated the mirror. I pushed against the fly screen hard. The corner popped out and I saw a screw fly off into the grass of my backyard. Then another. The screen was now loose. I could slip out. I stuck my head through, and as expected, my shoulders got caught. I shifted and rotated. The window banged and lurched. Each movement caused a deafening noise that I was horrified he would hear over his own carnage. I promise you, I tried. I tried so fucking hard to escape through that window. There was no way. There was never a way I could have escaped. I pulled myself back in. I turned and stared at the door. I steadied myself and waited for the oncoming fight, but there was nothing. Silence. The final minute. I hadn't noticed the silence since my head was outside and the wind had deafened me to the screams, but it was silent. No crashing, yelling, or even footsteps. There was nothing. I listened intently. I was waiting to hear it kick back in, for something to set him off, but it never came. A car started outside, and I jumped. The engine igniting caused me to be shaken from the dead silence of the situation, and I screamed. I cupped my hands around my mouth and sobbed. This was it, I thought. I just killed myself. There was no reaction. Silence. Blissful, unyielding silence. He was gone. I was safe. That car must have been him giving up and leaving. I wish I had known how dumb I was being, thinking those thoughts, thinking I was safe just because it went quiet. Then the silence made me feel safe. It was so comfortable. Now, remembering this, it feels disgusting. The weight of that silence was like mud, drowning me. Why was he so damn quiet? Why did he just stop? He was a raging, screaming lunatic, but he had the unnerving ability to just let it go, allow himself to be quiet. I moved to the door, cautiously, but quicker than I had been. I had convinced myself it was over. I grabbed the handle. I felt the cold metal in my palm. I rotated it, and it clicked open. I pulled the door towards myself and opened it to the hallway ahead of me. I looked out into the darkness, equal to that of my room. It was cold out there. The front door was letting the night creep into my house and freeze the walls. I scanned around, looking in every corner, every crack I could see. I couldn't see him, but it was dark, or he could have gone downstairs. My eyes did one final sweep, and then I locked onto the bathroom door frame. A single human eye stared at me. He was low, crouched. He had leant just the edge of his face out. I could see his thin, skeletal fingers grasping the doorframe for balance and the single yellowed eye boring a hole into my skull. I stared in silent horror as the eye rose smoothly to his full height, nearing 7 feet, the police told me. The single eye remained the only thing I saw as he rose, the fingers dragging up with it. "Whore!" he hissed in a harsh whisper. He stepped out into the hall, his bare feet slapping the wooden floor, his toenails long and untrimmed, brown as the wood. His flesh was covered in red pockmarks, scabs, and scarring from years of picking at his skin. He wore torn clothing and a stained singlet. His teeth were blunted from grinding them together, and black, thick slime hung from his lower lip, vomit, chunky bile dripping to his belly. A rusted hammer was tucked into his waistband, the claw side facing towards me. He began to quicken his pace as he made his way towards me, his spider-like hand wrapping around the metal head of the hammer. I launched into a sprint down the stairs. I am short. My stride was pathetic. For every 5 steps I made, he only needed 1. I stumbled awkwardly down the stairs. I watched my escape advance towards me as I barreled down the stairs. I could hear him behind me, weight in his footfalls. His heft came from the mere height he had. His lanky nature should mean he was quiet, but each crashing footstep shook the house. I reached the 3rd step from the bottom and felt fingers creep down the back of my collar and yank me to a stop. I squirmed for maybe a second before I took a blow to the back of my head. I could feel a piece of my skull break away and push into my head, the warm blood trickling down my spine. My vision dazed and he let go of me. I stumbled and landed face first on the floor. My body felt limp. I could barely move my arms. I dragged them up to my head, searching for where I took the beating. I pressed in slightly. The skin was split, but still mostly masking the shattered bone. As my finger pushed in, I could feel the skull pieces shift, like squeezing a bag of marbles. I looked towards the door and pushed my hands into the carpet, trying to heave myself towards it. I just couldn't. I then felt a hefty stomp on my spine, and the rush of pain caused me to faint. When I awoke, I was in a stone room, tied to a wall. The next couple of months was waiting to be fed weekly, taking the occasional pummeling, and then sleeping. I assumed I was dead and often considered choking myself with the ropes, but I'm forever glad I didn't. Hearing the bastard's final yelp as he got put down by the police still brings me a small level of peace when I remember the horror of the first 5 minutes. Well, that was pretty much it. I hope you liked the story till then. Bye-bye.